Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your kind presence. Happy New Year. Beginning the year with associating with Srimad Bhagavatam. We are continuing chapter 3, Canto 3, chapter 7, verses 1 to 14. Further inquiries by Vidura. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaha Padantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapara Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishwakan Vitam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Samyavadi Pastyatadi Satavrine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare सर्वशास्त्र पीयूषा सर्व वैदेक सत्फल सर्व सिद्धांत रत्नार्य सर्वलोकाय त्रिप्रदा सर्व भागवत प्राण श्रीमद् भागवत प्रभु कलिद्वंदो दिदारित्य श्री कृष्ण परिवर्तित O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most pronged transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enrich with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which is this risen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshashurayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute O Srimad Bhagavatam. Offer respectful obeisance to you by reading you on attains transcendental bliss. For your syllables rain pure love good upon the reader. You always be served by everyone for your incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Mad Sangim Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Mad Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namastute O Srimad Bhagavatam. O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, my great wealth, my deliverer, my good fortune, my bliss, offer respectful obeisance to you. Sadhu sadhu tadaina tini chochatara kahanam chakada chinmam premnarit katiospura O Srimad Bhagavatam. O give us saintliness from the saintly. O uplifted the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest Mahatma Thoda, accompany pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yutanvayatiratas Charte Swabhigna Swarad Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sargo Mrisha Damna Swena Sada Nirastakokam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I made it upon Lord Shri Krishna because it's the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, destruction, and the manifested universes. He's directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge under the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed in illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature appear factual, though they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent and transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanopaisha sabhya kalabasmin yuge jana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya upadrata. All under the one in this iron age of Kali, many but short lives, the quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above always disturbed. Narayan namaskritya narachevam narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of God in Narayan, unto Niran Narayan Rishi, the supreme human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasa Bhagavatam. Savaipum Suparodharmo Yato Bhakti Radokshija Haituki Apratiyata Yam Suprasiddhiti, the supreme occupation, Dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional souls unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional souls must be unmotivated, uninterrupted to completely satisfy the soul. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yatyasa Vairagyam Jnanam Chayadhaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the person of God at Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes, knowledge, and detachment from the world. Vedantita Tattva Vidas Tattvam Yachgnanam Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan Iti Sabhyate. Then the transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma Bhagavan. Shushrushosha Dhanse Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatse Vipra Punyartita Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees completely free from all vice, great service done by such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Tantastoya Badrani Vidunoti Saritsatam. Shri Krishna, the person of God, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor, the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment. From the heart of the devotee is developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues and properly heard and chanted. Nastaprashad Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamaslokir Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. By regular attendance in the class in the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the hearts almost completely destroyed. And loving service under the person of God who is praised with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Etavan Sankhya Yoga Vyam Swardharma Parinishtaya Janmalabha Parampum Samante Narayana Smriti. The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter or by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the person of God at the end of life. Akama Sarakama Vamoksha Kama Udaritivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajate Purusham Param. A person who has broad intelligence, where they be full of all material desires, without any material desires, or designed liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of God. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the Pondacharya of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome back. Let us cover any feedback anyone has from our last session. Discussion between Maitreya Muni and Vidura is continuing. Now the Hemabati, Varika, and Nalini Kanta poster. Hare Krishna. Conclusion of the Vedas is Krishna. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Vedescha sarvam aham eva vidyo. The conclusion of the Vedas. If you study the Vedas, and if you don't come to accepting Krishna, understanding Krishna, it means you have not read the Vedas. You have not understood the Vedas. You may have read the Vedas, but you definitely didn't understand the Vedas. The Vedas are a large body of knowledge, large body of spiritual and material knowledge, directing the living entity how to live in this world, but more important, to understand one's relationship with Krishna. So if we do not come to the conclusion, it means we have not understood the Vedic wisdom. And if you read Bhagavad Gita, which is the essence of the Vedas, and you come to the conclusion that Krishna is everything, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you basically have studied all the Vedas because you've come to the proper conclusion of the Vedas. So now you really don't need to go and study all the Vedas because you've already got the end result of the Vedas through the Bhagavad Gita and through understanding the conclusion of the Vedas. So that is very powerful. So many people study, read, delve into the Vedas, but unfortunately do not come to the right conclusion. Service is the real constitutional occupation of the living entity. False mastership is the basic disease of the conditioned soul. What we hear, we share with others. I had a very nice statement by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarmaj. Bhakti Siddhanta Sarmaj was saying that we should hear with ears that have an attitude of service. People hear to gain knowledge. People can hear, and that hearing can inflate one's ego. But when we hear Krishna Katha, we have to hear with ears that are inclined to the service attitude. So we're hearing in a mood of service. We're hearing how to increase our service. We're hearing how to purify our motivation to serve. This service or this hearing, with this attitude, becomes very beneficial. And the disease that we all have in this material world, conditioned souls have in this material world, the disease to enjoy separately from Krishna, the disease to be the false proprietor, false enjoyer. Unfortunately, this disease is very deep, and it may take many lifetimes to purify ourselves of this disease. Before one can purify or before one can become healthy, one should at least recognize one's illness. One should at least accept one's illness. If one does not accept one's illness, then there's no question of saying, I need a remedy. Most people don't consider themselves to be illusioned or to be sick. I'm okay, I'm perfect. If you're perfect, then there's no need for you to take remedy. Whereas if we understand, that's why you'll find throughout Srila Prabhupada's purports, Prabhupada doesn't just give you an Ethiopian idea, Ethiopian concept. Srila Prabhupada throughout his purports will highlight the deficiency, the problem, the disease, the issue at hand. Why we are suffering, why are we in this material world? What is the goal of life? So he'll share that, and he'll also then describe the process, and he will then discuss the goal. So in this way, we have a clear idea that this is the issue I have. I'm ill. I have a disease. And why did I get the disease? Why am I ill? What are the symptoms of the illness? And what is the actual cure? And if I apply the cure, what would be the consequence? What would be the result? How can I understand that I'm becoming healthy? Because if I have a disease that took 50 years to manifest, and if I take medication for one day, I'm not going to get healthy in that one day. I will need to take the medication for a long while, a long time. But while I'm taking the medication, one is I shouldn't intensify the disease. And secondly, I should understand what is the symptoms of being healthy. This way I can see, am I progressing towards health? And as long as I'm progressing towards health, I'm making advancement. That is why on this journey in spiritual life and even in material circles, as they say, you need to love the process, become attached to the process, fall in love with the process. Yes, the goal is wonderful, but the goal may be far, or the destination is wonderful, but the destination may be very far. Sometimes we may fool ourselves. I'm going back to God in this life. Wonderful if you are, but maybe not, most likely not. Okay, maybe 50 lifetimes. Okay, good. So at least I know that in 50 lifetimes, I'm going to go back to Godhead. So you can't be attached to that goal to say, if I don't achieve that goal in this lifetime, I'm going to stop the process. No, because the goal may be 50 lifetimes. You will achieve that in 50 lifetimes. So, yes, I'm happy about the goal, but if I become attached to the process of Krishna consciousness, then it does not matter whether it takes one lifetime or whether it means I go back to God at right this moment, end of this life, or 50 lifetimes or billion lifetimes. It does not matter. Why? Because I am attached to the process. And what we hear, we should share with others. This is also important aspect. Share with those who are interested, try to make others interested. And in this way, this is also part of self-purification. Right, so further inquiries by Vidura. We're going to cover till text 14, two sections. Verse 7, verses 1 to 7. Vidura inquired about Ishwar and the Jiva. And then 8 to 14, Maitreya dispel all misconceptions about the Jiva, about the Ishwar and Jiva, and recommended Bhakti. So in the previous chapter, we heard about how from the Virat Rupa, from the universal form, practically every aspect of creation has manifested. All the presiding deities in charge of the material creation have manifested. The instructions to manage this universe, every facet of creation is coming from the universal form. All different living entities, different manifestations related to the three modes of nature are all coming from Virat Rupa. Text 1. Shri Sukho Vacha Evam Bruvanam Maitreyam Dwapayanas Suto Buddha Prinayan Iva Bharatya Vidura Pratya Pashat Vidura Pratya Basata. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, O king, while Maitreya, the great sage, was thus speaking, Vidura, the learned son of Dwapayana Vyas, expressed a request in a pleasing manner by asking this question. Text 2. Vidura Vacha Brahma Katam Bhagavatas Chinmatra Matrasya Vikarina Leelaya Chapi Yuj Yeran Nirgunasya Gunakriya. Sri Vidura said, O great Brahmana, since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the complete spiritual whole and is unchangeable, how is he connected with the material modes of nature and their activities? If this is his pastime, how do the activities of the unchangeable take place and exhibit qualities without the modes of nature? So Vidura's inquiry is interesting. The Supreme Lord is completely beyond material tinge. Yet from him comes the manifestation of different modes of material nature. So Vidura is trying to understand, how is this possible? Prabhupada in the purport says, As described in the previous chapter, the difference between the supersoul and the supersoul, the Supreme Lord, and the living entities is that the activities of the Lord in creating the cosmic manifestation are performed by the Lord through the agency of his multifarious energies. But this manifestation is bewildering to the living entities. So Vidura's inquiry is important because there are those that believe that because the modes of material nature come from the Lord, he's tinged by that. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also discusses this point. So Prabhupada's first statement in the purport is really answering the question. And this answer is applicable for many of the contradictions that people face in relation to the Supreme Lord. So, for example, in this case, Prabhupada is making the point that because of Krishna's multifarious energies, he creates not directly, but through these energies. And because he's creating through these multifarious energies, these energies have different features and functions, and therefore they can manifest different features and functions. Now, in the chat, share what other aspects of the Supreme Lord that people may be confused or bewildered or cannot understand is managed or answered through inconceivable energies of Krishna. What other examples can you think of that this answer is also applicable? Here the question is in relation to creation, but this answer is also applicable in many aspects where there is contradiction in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So karma, maybe expand that a little more. Nevertheless, what about karma? So what aspects of the Supreme Lord what difficulty, challenges, contradictions that are in the Supreme Lord is answered by multifarious energies. So Krishna's relationship still expand a little. So how is Krishna's relationship a contradiction, a challenge, and can be answered through Krishna's inconceivable energies? I'll give you a hint. And even remember, Krishna's energies also means Krishna's different forms. So for example, in terms of creation, Krishna expands himself in the form of Mahavishnu and then in form of Sadashiva. Right? So, because remember all the energies, and here's another important point that we should always keep in mind. In Krishna consciousness, when we talk about energy, it's never impersonal. There is no impersonal energy that exists in Krishna consciousness. So when we talk about energy, we're also talking about a personality. So you could say, in terms of this reply by Srila Prabhupada, that the activities of the Lord in creating the cosmic manifestation are performed by the Lord through the agency of his multifarious personalities. Because people, when they think energy, oh yeah, it's like just, heat and light. No, energies means personalities. So now if you go, what contradictions are reconciled through Krishna's personalities? And I'll give you a hint. Sri Shopanishad. So Mother Les says, even in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna brings up this point. Material nature gives us a body depending on our karma and nature, but she is under his direction. All right, so here you're talking about how material nature is providing the living entity's body. Good. And Hemavati is talking about relationships. Okay, so in Sri Shopanishad, it is described that Krishna is near and he is far. He is inside and is outside. He runs and he doesn't have legs and hands. He's in the material world and he's not in the material world. These are contradictions that if somebody just hears that this is God, they'll get totally bewildered. Because how can somebody be inside and outside? It just doesn't make sense. How can Krishna be in the material world and outside the material world? It's either he's out or he's in. He can't be both. Like somebody's in the house. Oh, but there's the outside. Hold on. He can't be in the house and outside. He's either in the house, out of the house, or in between the doorway. He can't be, you can't say he's in the house, he's in between doorway and outside. Nope, doesn't make sense. Krishna creates, yet he does not create. Good. There's a contradiction. Just like they say, right, God created this creation and he rested. But then there may be statements as if God didn't create this creation. Krishna didn't create this creation. No, Krishna did. No, Krishna didn't. There's a fight. So how does this fight get reconciled? Krishna's multifarious energies that are personalities. Kinkar says, Krishna is energetic, hence Lord Krishna is complete and can resolve all contradictions from within his spiritual energies. Yes. So we want to know, are there any other contradictions that come to your mind? Creation, like Shama says, Krishna creates and doesn't create. Or I gave from Sri Shopanishad, he's inside and is outside. He runs and he doesn't run. He has hands and he doesn't have hands. These are all contradictions in the Vedas. Krishna is equal to all but favors his devotees. This is a contradiction. Is he favoring or is he not favoring? It's both. Why? If you see different aspects of Krishna, different manifestations of Krishna, like for example, a simple one. Please answer yes or no in the chat. Okay, here's an example of a contradiction. Does Krishna have 4 arms or 2 arms? Both. Any others? So Krishna has 2 arms or 4 arms. See? Now, if you didn't know that all these forms are Krishna's, like if you go to India, there are some people that are convinced without doubt that Krishna and Narayan or Vishnu are two separate personalities. They're convinced they're not the same. So, does Krishna have two arms or Krishna has four arms? Well, Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan, Sham Sundar has two arms, and Krishna, in the form of Narayan, he has four arms. So yes, both. There's no contradiction. Whereas many will find a contradiction. Why? Because they do not understand these personalities, or if you take it further, as Prabhupada is talking, they do not understand Krishna's multifarious energies. And these energies are personalities. Like when we talk about Mata Bhumi, it's a personality. We talk about the material energy, it's a personality. Durga. Prabhupada then continues. So before we continue, so keep in mind, his form displayed to Arjuna. Yes, universal form. Whenever you're reading scripture, whenever you hear some statement from the Vedas, and it just doesn't make sense, your brain cannot reconcile that, then you just have to answer it like this. The reason why your brain cannot reconcile is because you just don't know the workings of Krishna's multifarious energies. That's all. Like Srila Prabhupada gave the example of magic. Prabhupada said magic simply means you do not know the art. That's all. You just don't know how it's done. But if you know it's done, just like if one magician goes to another magician that knows the same trick, you can't bewilder him, you can't fool him. He's going to say, I know exactly what you're doing. Whereas if you go to someone that has no clue, a conditioned soul, and a magician goes, oh wow, such a great thing. Oh, they become enamored, they become entertained. Such amazing magic. That's just because you do not know the art. The Lord is therefore the master of energies, whereas the living entities are subjugated by them. By asking various questions about transcendental activities, Vidura is clearing the misconceptions that when the Lord either descends to the earth in his incarnations or appears himself with all his potencies, he is subjected to the influence of Maya just like an ordinary living entity. 2 points. If you don't understand something, ask. Why do we need to understand? Why is understanding such an important thing? So there's two things that we need to distinguish here: knowing and understanding. I know and I understand. Vidura, he knows and he's trying to clarify, he's trying to understand. Therefore, he is inquiring further. He is asking questions. So why is understanding more important than knowing? What does understanding do that knowing does not do? Or maybe you think there is no difference. Is there a difference? First. And what does understanding do that knowing may not do? Shama says, remove ignorance. So if I know something, I know Krishna is God. I understand Krishna is God. Mother Less says, so correct application can be done of the knowledge. And Hemavati and Nalingana says, yes, understanding convinces you. When you understand something, It means you have knowledge plus clarity and realization and understanding of that knowledge, which does what? It allows you to apply the process more diligently. If you have knowledge, you may be obedient to the knowledge, but you may not survive. You may not go through all the obstacles. You may not even have done it properly just by having knowledge. But by understanding, why am I doing it like this? Why should it not be like this? What will happen if I do it like this? This type of understanding now solidifies the knowledge, it convinces me, and it allows my actions to be consistent. It allows my actions to endure. It allows my actions to continue without any difficulties. If you see the knowledge that Prabhupada is sharing in his books, can you summarize, and this is to expand on this point, then we'll move on. Can you summarize? So remember, we're talking about knowledge and we talk about understanding. So if you had to, yes, understanding removes doubts. So can you summarize everything in Srila Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports in few words in terms of knowledge? If somebody had to ask you what knowledge is in these books, can you summarize that in 5 words or 5 statements or few statements or few words? I just want to know, if somebody had to ask you what's contained in all these books, give me few words. That summarizes everything that is in Srila Prabhupada's books. Realize, so let's say king of knowledge, all right, realize knowledge, spiritual knowledge, perfection of life, good. Any others? Few words that basically can conclude everything in Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports. Back to Godhead, going back to Godhead, everything you need to know about going back to Godhead, Krishna consciousness, transcendental knowledge. In Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says 5 subject matters. Reawakening our relation with Krishna. Good. So consider this now. Knowledge of the jiva, the supreme material natural karma, and how to remember Krishna and always never forget him. So the activities of God and his associates, both in the material and spiritual world, to realize the object of knowledge. Perfect. Now, you've just gave me a summary of what is in Prabhupada's books. Why did Prabhupada then spend 80 volumes to just tell us this? He could have just written a few pages, 1 page, and just summarized everything that you just talked about. Why 80 volumes? It's like even this purport. Not just for the knowledge, but for the proper understanding. Well, repetition, Prabhupada could have just then created multiple pages with the same knowledge. Page 1, exactly the same. Page 2, exactly the same. Page 3, exactly. Prabhupada would have then tell you, read every page, repetition. It's still same knowledge. But why did Prabhupada spend 80 volumes from different angles, giving different perspectives, different analogies, different examples, so that we become convinced, so that we can understand. Yes, the understanding is key, because if you understand, you'll never leave. If you truly understand Krishna consciousness and something drastic happen in our society, whatever, we don't know what drastic thing, but let's say something drastic happens, something very disappointing happens in our society. Let's say not only if something very drastic or disappointing happens in our society, but even something very drastic or disappointing happens to your mentors. But if you understood Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports, you would not leave Krishna consciousness, because you've got the proper understanding. And therefore, Prabhupada is making the point that Vidura is asking various questions to clarify this understanding. Then Prabhupada continues, this is generally the calculation of less intelligent philosophers who consider the position of the Lord and the living entity to be on the same level. Vidura is hearing the great sage Maitreya refute these arguments. The Lord is described in this verse as Chin Matra, or completely spiritual. The personality of Godhead has unlimited potencies to create and manifest many wonderful things, both temporary and permanent. Because this material world is the creation of his external energy, it thus appears to be temporary. It is manifested at certain intervals, maintained for some time, and again dissolved and conserved in his own energy. As described in Bhagavad Gita, Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate. But the creation of his internal potency, the spiritual, is not a temporary manifestation like the material world, but is eternal and full of transcendental knowledge, opulence, energy, strength, beauties, and glories. Our home, our real home, is different from this material world. This material world is temporary, whereas our real home is full of transcendental knowledge, opulence, energy, strength, beauties, and glories. Such manifestations of the Lord's potencies are eternal and are therefore called nirguna, or free from all tinges of the modes of material nature, even up to the mode of material goodness. Prabhupada is giving the understanding of nirgun. Nirgun does not mean no variegatedness. Nirgun means, when we say the Lord's potencies, when we say the Lord is nirguna, because in Sanskrit, nir means no and guna means modes, qualities. So no qualities, no modes. Conclusion, no form, no personality, no traits. Conclusion, impersonal. Conclusion, wrong. You need to read Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports. Then you'll understand. Nirgun means free from all tinges of the modes of material nature. It does not mean no variegatedness. The spiritual world is transcendental even to material goodness and thus is unchangeable. Anything that's tinged with the modes, changeable. Anything not tinged with the modes, unchangeable. Since the Supreme Lord of such eternal and unchangeable qualities is never subjugated by anything like material influence, how can his activities and form be conceived to be under the influence of the illusory Maya, as is the case with the living entities? A juggler or magician displays many wonders with his acts and arts. He can become a cow by his magical art tactics, and yet he is not that cow. But at the same time, the cow displayed by the magician is not different from him. Similarly, material potency is not different from the Lord because it is an emanation from him. But at the same time, that manifestation of potency is not the Supreme Lord. The Lord's transcendental knowledge and potencies always remain the same. They do not change, even when displayed in material world. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord descends to the earth by his own internal potency, and therefore there is no question of his becoming materially contaminated, changed, or otherwise affected by the modes of material nature. The Lord is Sagun by his own internal potency, but at the same time he is Nirgun, since he is not in touch with the material energy. The restrictions of the prison house are applicable to prisoners who are condemned by the king's law, but the king is never affected by such implications. Although he may visit the prison house out of his good will, in the Vishnu Puran, the 6 opulences of the Lord are stated to be non-different from him. The opulences of transcendental knowledge, strength, opulence, potency, beauty, and renunciation are all identical with the Supreme Personality, with the Personality of Godhead. When he personally displays such opulences in the material world, they have no connection with the modes of material nature. The very word chin matratva is the guarantee that the Lord's activities are always transcendental, even when displayed in the material world. His activities are as good as the personality of Godhead himself. Otherwise, liberated devotees like Sukadeva Goswami would never have been attracted by them. Vidura inquired how the Lord's activities can be in the mode of material nature, as is sometimes miscalculated by persons with a poor fund of knowledge. The inebriety of the material qualities is due to the difference between the material body and the spirit soul. The conditioned soul's activities are displayed through the medium of the modes of material nature and therefore perverted in appearance. However, the Lord's body and the Lord himself are one and the same. And when the Lord's activities are displayed, they are certainly non-different from the Lord in all respects. The conclusion is that persons who consider Lord's activities material are certainly mistaken. When we see Krishna in this material world performing his pastimes 5,000 years ago, we see, for example, Krishna having 16,108 palaces, so much opulence. He's having so many queens. All those opulences have no tinge to the material opulences or wealth in the material world. If I had to build with all the gold and jewels of the earth planet and build 16,000 palaces, and I show you the 16,000 palaces, and then I take you 5,000 years ago and I show you the 16,000 palaces, they may look identical and you may say they're the same, but they're totally different. One is tinged with the modes of material nature, and the other is totally transcendental. The 16,100 queens look like, beautiful female personalities. And if I find beautiful 16,100 beautiful female personalities, you may say, well, yeah, they're all females. They look the same, but totally different. Anything connected, or not necessarily anything connected, but when Krishna displays his activities, displays his pastimes, displays his form, every aspect of Krishna's display is Sagun and it is Nirgun, both. People who study the Vedas, they only come to one conclusion. Krishna is either Sagun or is Nirgun. He can't be both. Here, he's both. How is he Nirgun? Because it has no tinge with material energy, material nature, material modes of nature. How is it Sagun? Because it is eternal, full of knowledge, bliss, Satchit Ananda, transcendental. And it has all the traits of transcendence. And Prabhupada is saying this is all non-different from the Supreme Personality of God. An implication. If I associate with Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's form, Krishna's name, Krishna's attributes, I am actually directly associating with Krishna. They're non-different. This is the beauty and the power of transcendence. Text 3. Kridayam udaya udamo ribasya kamas chikri dishan yata swatas triptasya chakatam nivritasya sadan yata. Boys are enthusiastic to play with other boys or with various diversions because they are encouraged by desire. But there is no possibility of such desire for the Lord because he is self-satisfied and detached from everything at all times. Purport. Since the Supreme Person of Godhead is one without a second, there is no possibility that anything besides him can exist. He expands himself by his energies in multi-forms of self-expansions and separated expansions as well, just as fire expands itself by heat and light. Since there is no other existence besides the Lord himself, the Lord's association with anything manifested, manifests his association with himself. In Bhagavad Gita 9:4, the Lord says, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta mortina matstani sarva bhutani na chaham teshwavastita. The complete manifestation of the cosmic situation is an expansion of the Lord himself in his impersonal feature. All things are situated in him only, yet he is not in them. That is the opulence of the Lord's attachment and detachment. He is attached to everything, yet he is detached from all. So here is the example that illustrates how contradictions can be reconciled. Why? Because Krishna has unlimited, inconceivable, multifarious energies and expansions, all non-different from him, but all that behave in different facets. Here, Prabhupada is quoting the verse from 9:4. All things are situated in him, yet he is not in them. It's a contradiction. But if you understand how is Krishna in the material creation, in the form of Supersoul, in the form of the impersonal Brahman energy. How is he not? In the form of Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, because he is in Goloka Vrindavan. So like that, we can reconcile these very difficult, intricate statements in the Vedas. 4. Ashrakshet Bhagavan Vishwam Guna Mayatma Mayaya Tayasam Stapayet Yetyed Bhuya Pratya Pidash Yashyati. By his self-sheltered potency of the three modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By her, he maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. Report. This cosmic universe is created by the Lord for those living entities who are carried away by the illusory thought of becoming one with him by imitation. The three modes of material nature are for the further bewilderment of the conditioned souls. The conditioned living entity, bewildered by the illusory energy, considers himself a part of the material creation due to forgetfulness of his spiritual identity. And thus he becomes entangled in the material activities life after life. This material world is not for the purpose of this material world is not for the purpose of the Lord himself, but it is for the conditioned souls who wanted to control due to misuse of their God-gifted minute independence. Thus, the conditioned souls are subjected to repeated birth and death. 5. Deshata kalato yosav avastata swaton yata avilupta vabodatma sayujyata jaya katam. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nuisance? Purport. The consciousness of the living entity is always present and never changes under any circumstances, as above mentioned. When a living man moves from one place to another, he is conscious that he has changed his position. He is always present in the past, present, and future, like electricity. One can remember incidents from his past and can conjure about his future, also on the basis of past experience. He never forgets his personal identity, even though he is placed in awkward circumstances. How then can the living entity become forgetful of his real identity as pure spirit soul and identify with matter unless influenced by something beyond himself? It's a very beautiful discussion. You can see Vidura is very thoughtfully trying to understand, and Prabhupada is clarifying that and expanding that understanding for us. Consciousness doesn't change. The living entity is always conscious. And not only is he always conscious, he's conscious of past, present, and future. And Prabhupada is giving an example. You can learn from your past, you remember your past. You're living in the present and you can conjure about the future. So you're really living past, present, and future. Yet, if that is the case, that you always conscious and you can never forget, you can know past, present, and future, how is it you forgot Krishna? Seems like there's something missing here. The puzzle doesn't fit. There's a piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit. Doesn't make sense. Well, it only makes sense, as Prabhupada is saying, if there is an external force that covers you. When an external energy, an external force covers you that now impacts what you remember and what you don't, then we can conclude, yes, that is why. Prabhupada says, the conclusion is that the living entity is influenced by the avidya potency, as confirmed in both Vishnu Puran and the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. The living entity is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 7.5 as para prakriti, superior energy, And how is superior energy getting influenced by inferior energy? And in the Vishnu Purana, he is mentioned as Parashakti. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord as potency and not as the potent. The potency can exhibit many potencies, but the potency cannot equal the potent at any stage. The sun can emit potent sun rays. The potency is the sun rays. The potent is the sun. And Prabhupada is giving wonderful example and point. The potency cannot become the potent. Living entity is the potency. The potent is Krishna. Shaktiman and Shakti. Marginal Shakti and Shaktiman. Krishna is Shaktiman. Krishna is the potent. And the marginal potency Jiva Tattva, a living entity, is the potency. It cannot be the same. One potency may be overcome by another potency, but to the potent, all potencies are under control. The Jiva potency or the Kshetragna Shakti of the Lord has the tendency to overpower or be overpowered by the external potency, avidya, karma, samgna. And in this way, he is placed in awkward circumstance of material existence. A living entity cannot be forgetful of his real identity unless influenced by avidya potency. Because the living entity is prone to the influence of avidya potency, he can never equal the supreme potent. 6. Bhagavan eka evas evaisha sarvashetreshva vastita amusya durbhagavat bhagavatam va klesho va karmabhi kuta. The Lord as the super soul is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? Krishna is in my heart, yet I do the wrong thing. The next question put forward by Vidura to Maitreya. Please note, Vidura is asking questions one by one, and what Prabhupada is doing? Prabhupada is already answering the questions. Prabhupada is already putting context. Prabhupada is already giving us the conclusion, even before the conclusion is coming. Prabhupada is clarifying, giving the conclusion, giving the understanding, all in his Bhaktivedanta purports. Maitreya's next question put forward by Vidura, the next question put forward by Vidura to Maitreya is, why are the living entities subjected to so many miseries and misfortune in spite of the Lord's presence in their hearts as super soul? The body is considered a fruitful tree, and the living entity and the Lord as super soul are like two birds seated in that tree. The individual soul is eating the fruit of the tree, but the super soul, the Lord, is witnessing the activities of the other bird. A citizen of the state may be in miseries for want of sufficient supervision by the state authority. But how can it be possible for a citizen to suffer from other citizens while the chief of state is personally present? From another point of view, it is understood that the jiva living entity is qualitatively one with the Lord, and thus his knowledge is pure. His knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nishanas, especially in the presence of the Supreme Lord. How then does the living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? The Lord is the father and protector of every living entity, and he is known as Bhutabrit, or the maintainer of living entities. Why then should the living entity be subjected to so many sufferings and misfortunes? It should not be so. But actually, we see that it is happening everywhere. This question is therefore put forward by Vidura for solution. 7. Etasmin me mano vidvan kidyat jnana sankate tanna paranudo vibo kashmalam ma nasham mahat. O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the stress of the nations, and I therefore request you to clear it up. Purport. Such mental bewilderment as represented here by Vidura takes place for some living entities, but not everyone. For if everyone were bewildered, there would be no possibility of a solution by higher personality. One time, some prophet asked, or somebody said, "There's no God." And the question was, why you say there's no God? So the person said, "There's no God." Prabhupada asked him why. And his response was, because nobody's seen God. Srila Prabhupada said, that's because you don't know who's seen God. If you say nobody's seen God, how did you come to the conclusion that nobody's seen God? Did you analyze every single living entity in this creation? So for you to say there's no God because nobody's seen him, well, that's a wrong conclusion. Now, Prabhupada, he could easily identify that as a mistake. Why? Because he's seen God. He's seen God at every moment. So therefore, Prabhupada would easily say, well, you can't say that nobody's seen God. Implying, I can see God, so how can you say nobody's seen God? Similarly, here, there are those personalities that know the truth. So we just need to approach those personalities that have seen the truth. 8. Shri Sukha Vacha Sastitam Kodita Ksatra Tattva Jigna Suna Muni Pratyaha Bhagavach Chita Smayan Iva Gata Smaha Smaya. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, O King, Maitreya, being thus agitated by the inquisitive Vidura, at first seemed astonished, but then he replied to him without hesitation, since he was fully God conscious. Since the great sage Maitreya was filled with God consciousness, he had no reason to be astonished at such contradictory questions by Vidura. Therefore, although as a devotee he externally expressed surprise, as if he did not know how to reply to those questions, he immediately became perfectly settled and properly replied to Vidura. Yasmin vignate sarvam eva vignatam bhavati. Anyone who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent, and devotional service to the Lord makes him able to know everything by the grace of the Lord. Although a devotee may apparently express himself to be ignorant, he is full of knowledge in every intricate matter. The Dami Buddhi Yogam Tam. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, to those who are serving me, I give them the understanding. So if one is engaged in devotional service, in due course of time, understanding Krishna, knowledge of Krishna will manifest. 9. Maitreya Vacha Seyam Bhagavato Maya Yannayena viduryate ishwarasya vimuktasya karpanyam utabandhanam. Sri Maitra said, certainly conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman of the personality of Godhead is overcome by illusion or Maya, and at the same time they maintain that he is unconditioned. This is against all logic. Report. Sometimes it appears that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is 100% spiritual, cannot be the cause of the illusory potency which covers the knowledge of the individual soul. But factually, there is no doubt that the illusory external energy is also part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. When Vyasadeva realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he saw the Lord along with his external potency, which covers the pure knowledge of the individual living entities. Why the external energy acts in this way may be considered as follows, as analyzed by great commentators like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Jiva Goswami. Although the material illusory energy is distinct from the spiritual energy, it is one of many energies of the Lord. And thus the material mode of nature, the mode of goodness, etc., are surely qualities of the Lord. The energy and the energetic personality of God are not different. And although such energy is one with the Lord, he is never overpowered by it. Although the living entities are also part and parcel of the Lord, they are overcome by the material energy. The inconceivable yogam Aishwaram of the Lord, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 9.5, is misunderstood by the froggish philosophers. In order to support the theory that Narayan, the Lord himself, becomes a Daridra Narayan, a poor man, they propose that the material energy overcome the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, however, offer a very nice example in explanation. They say that although the sun is all light, the clouds, darkness, and snowfall are all part and parcel of the sun. Without the sun, there is no possibility of the skies being overcast with clouds or darkness, nor can there be snowfall on the earth. Although life is sustained by the sun, life is also disturbed by darkness and snowfall produced by the sun. But it is also a fact that the sun itself is never overcome by darkness, clouds, or snow. The sun is far, far away from such disturbances. Only those who have a poor fund of knowledge say that the sun is covered by a cloud or by darkness. Similarly, the Supreme Brahman or Parabrahman, the personality of God, is always unaffected by the influence of material energy, although it is one of his energies. Parasya Saktir Videva Suryate. There is no reason to assert that the Supreme Brahman is overpowered by illusory energy. Clouds and darkness and snowfall can cover only a very insignificant portion of the sun's rays. Similarly, the modes of material nature may react upon the ray-like living entities. It is the misfortune of the living entities, certainly not without reason, that the influence of material energy acts on his pure consciousness and eternal bliss. This covering up of pure consciousness and eternal bliss is this covering up of pure consciousness and eternal bliss is due to avidya karma samgna. The energy which acts on the infinitesimal living entity who misuse their minute independence. According to Vishnu Puran, Bhagavad Gita, and all other Vedic literatures, the living entities are generated from the Tathastha energy of the Lord, and thus they are always the energy of the Lord and not the energetic. The living entities are like the sun's rays. Although, as explained above, there is no qualitative difference between the sun and its rays. The sun rays are sometimes overpowered by another energy of the sun, namely the clouds, or by snowfall. Similarly, although the living entities are qualitatively one with the superior energy of the Lord, they have the tendency to be overpowered by inferior material energy. In the Vedic hymns, it is said that the living entities are like the sparks of a fire. The spark of fire are also fire, but the burning potency of the spark is different from that of the original fire. When the spark flies out of touch with the original fire, they come under the influence of a non-fiery atmosphere. Thus, they maintain the potency. Thus, they maintain the potency to be again one of the fire as sparks, but not as the original fire. The spark can everlastingly remain within the original fire as its part and parcel. But the moment the spark becomes separated from the original fire, their misfortune and miseries begin. A clear conclusion is that the Supreme Lord, who is the original fire, is never overpowered, but the infinitesimal sparks of the fire can become overpowered by the illusory effect of Maya. It is a most ludicrous argument to say that the Supreme Lord is overpowered by his own material energy. The Lord is the master of the material energy, and the living entities are in conditioned state controlled by material energy. So a very beautiful example property sharing by Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Swami of the sun manifesting and creating clouds and snowfall. Yet the clouds and snowfall do not cover the sun. So, like that purport explains in this beautiful purport. That is the version of the Bhagavad Gita. The froggish philosopher who put forward the argument that the Supreme Lord is overpowered by material mode of goodness are themselves illusioned by the same material energy, although they think of themselves as liberated souls. They support their arguments by a false and laborious jugglery of words, which is a gift of the same illusory energy of the Lord. But the poor froggish philosophers, due to their false sense of knowledge, cannot understand the situation. In the 6th canto, 9th chapter, 34th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, Duravo bodhana ivataya ta vayam viharo yogo yad ashrano sharira idam vavekshitar tasmat samavaya atma neva vikrit yamanena sagunam agunash shrijasipasiharasi. Thus the demigods prayed to the Supreme Lord that although his activities are very difficult to understand, they can still be understood to some extent by those who are sincerely engaged in the transcendent loving service of the Lord. Demigods admitted that although the Lord is apart from the material influence or creation, he nevertheless creates, maintains, and annihilates a complete cosmic creation manifestation by the agency of demigods. 10. Yad artena vina musya pumsa atma viparya yaya pratiyata upadrashtu swa shiraschedanadika. A living entity in his distress regarding his self-identity. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off. A teacher in a school once threatened his pupil that he would cut off the pupil's head and hang it on the wall so that the child could see how his head had been cut off. The child became frightened and stopped his mischief. Similarly, the miseries of the pure soul and the disruption of his self-identification are managed by the external energy of the Lord, which controls those mischievous living entities who want to go against the will of the Lord. Actually, there is no bondage or misery for the living entity, nor does he ever lose his pure knowledge. In his pure consciousness, when he thinks a little seriously about his position, he can understand that he is eternally subordinate to the mercy of the Supreme, and that his attempt to become one with the Supreme Lord is false illusion. Life after life, the living entity falsely tries to lord it over material nature and become the Lord of the material world. But there is no tangible result. At last, when frustrated, he gives up his material activities and tries to become one with the Lord and speculate with much jugglery of words, but without success. These activities are performed under the dictation of the illusory energy. Experience is compared to the experience of one having his head cut off in a dream. The man whose head has been cut off also see his head has been cut off. If a person's head is severed, he loses his power to see. Therefore, if a man sees that his head has been cut off, it means that he thinks like that in hallucination. Similarly, a living entity is eternally subordinate to the Supreme Lord, and he has this knowledge with him, but artificially he thinks that he is God himself, and that although he is God, he has lost his knowledge due to Maya. This conception has no meaning, just as there is no meaning to seeing one's head being cut off. This is the process by which knowledge is covered. And because this artificial rebellious condition of the living entity gives him all trouble, it is to be understood that he should take to his normal life as a devotee of the Lord and be relieved from the misconception of being God. And the so-called liberation of thinking oneself God is the last reaction of avidya by which the living entity is entrapped. The conclusion is that the living entity deprived of eternal transcendental service to the Lord becomes illusion in many ways. Even in his conditioned life, he is the eternal servant of the Lord. His servitude under the spell of illusory Maya is also a manifestation of his eternal condition of service. Because he has rebelled against the service of the Lord, he is therefore put in the service of Maya. He is still serving, but in a perverted manner. When he wants to get out of the service under material bondage, he next desires to become one with the Lord. This is another illusion. The best course, therefore, is surrender unto the Lord and thus get rid of the illusory Maya for good, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Devi Yesa Guna Maya, Mama Maya Durateya, Eva Ye Prapadyante, Mayam Etam Tarantite. So another beautiful analogy, an example. Imagine you're sleeping, and in your sleep you're dreaming, and you're dreaming that you went to your enemy's house, and your enemy grabs your head, and he chops your head. But in your dream, you are still seeing that your head is chopped off. And that's the example that Prabhupada is giving. How can, if your head is chopped off, you can't see, yet you can still see that your head is chopped off. So clearly, if you can see that your head is chopped off, it means that your head is not chopped off. So this is how the material energy is able to cover the living entity in forgetfulness. Yet the living entity has not forgotten Krishna, and he has not lost his service. It's covered. And therefore, Krishna consciousness is a process of reviving, process of renovating, process of resuscitating, process of reawakening. It's not about getting something new. It's simply about uncovering. And another beautiful point is you haven't forgotten service. The service attitude is intrinsic to your nature. It's always there, it will always be there for Krishna. But that service has been misdirected. Because you want to lord it over material nature, now you're serving Maya. So the service attitude will always be there. We simply have to now understand, recognize, surrender, and say, now Krishna, from now on, I am your servant. I am Krishna Das. No more Maya Das. I have understood my conditioned state. And yes, I may still be influenced by the conditioning, but I understand the influence. Robert gave the example of the fan. If the fan is moving, and now you pull the plug's out. The fan is liberated, but yet the fan still moves. But because there is no more power, it's slowly decreasing in speed. It's not going to stop immediately. Similarly, when we come to the proper understanding, we surrender. And Prabhupada says this is the best course. Just surrender. And accept that now I am servant of Krishna. So when you have come to that conclusion and you act on that surrender, the plug is really pulled out. But it's not going to stop immediately. So therefore, I will have to tolerate the conditioning until death. Just like we all have this material body. And this material body comes with its conditioning due to past karmic influence. It has a certain conditioning. Each one of us has a certain list of conditioning. And we may all know that I am Krishna's servant. We may all surrender to Krishna as well. But each list of conditioning that we all have, we will still need to tolerate until the body is destroyed. So that tolerance has to be cultivated. It's not that, oh, now I surrender, and as soon as I surrender from tomorrow, I have a spiritual body. And from tomorrow, I don't have any issues with my body. Or we have somebody that surrenders and we see that they have to go to the hospital. Like, how is that possible? He's a pure devotee. He surrendered. How can he go to the hospital? The only reason we see why Prabhupada also had to go through so many illnesses. Yet, he was transcendental. How is it that somebody who's transcendental is going through issues related to, apparent issues related to the material body? Is to show us the science of tolerating, is to show us the lesson of tolerating. We have to tolerate the inconvenience of prarabdha karma. Why? Because the law of this creation is once prarabdha karma is there, you can't destroy it. Yes, if Krishna wants, it can. Krishna can do anything. And why can Krishna do everything? Coming back to the first point. Because he has inconceivable energies. He can do anything. So Krishna can. But generally, Krishna doesn't override the laws that govern this creation. So therefore, you'll have to go through it. We may have a female body, we may have a male body. They all come with their own issues. We'll have to tolerate. But I'm tolerating with understanding that I am not this body, that I am Krishna's servant. And that, and because we're focusing on the service, we're focusing on that relationship with Krishna, that allows us to continue. And when we go through the transition of death, at that point, I lose this material body. And because I have surrendered and I understand my identity, and I remember the Supreme Lord, I then regain my spiritual identity without a material covering. And that is liberation. That is perfection. That is going back to Godhead. 11. Yata jale chandra masha kampadis tat krito guna drishyate sannapi drashtur atmano natmano guna. As the moon reflects on water, appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the qualities of the water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. The Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, is compared to the moon in the sky, and the living entity are compared to the reflection of the moon on water. The moon in the sky is fixed and does not appear to quiver like the moon on the water. Actually, like the original moon in the sky, the moon reflected on the water should also not quiver. But because of being associated with water, the reflection appears to be quivering, although in actual fact, the moon is fixed. So another beautiful example. The water moves, but the moon does not move. Similarly, the living entities appears to be tainted by material qualities like illusion, lamentation, and miseries. Although in the pure soul, such qualities are completely absent. The word pratyate, which means apparently and not actually, like the experience of having one's head cut off in a dream, is significant here. The reflection of the moon on the water is a separated rays, is the separated rays of the moon and not the actual moon. The separated parts and parcels of the Lord entangled in the water of the material existence have the quivering quality, whereas the Lord is like the actual moon in the sky, which is not at all in touch with the water. The light of the sun and the moon reflected on matter makes the matter bright and praiseworthy. The living symptoms are compared to the light of the sun and the moon illuminating material manifestations like trees and mountains. Reflection of the sun or moon is accepted as a real sun or moon by less intelligent men, and the purest monist philosophers develops from these ideas. In fact, the light of the sun and the moon are actually different from the sun and the moon themselves, although they are always connected. The light of the moon spread throughout the sky appears to be impersonal, but the moon planet as it is personal, and the living entities on the moon planet are also personal. In the rays of the moon, different material entities appear to be comparatively more or less important. The light of the moon on the Taj Mahal appears to be more beautiful than the same light in the wilderness, although the light of the moon is the same everywhere. Due to being differently appreciated, it appears different. Similarly, the light of the Lord is equally distributed everywhere, but due to being differently received, it appears to be different. One should not, therefore, accept the reflection of the moon on the water as actual and misunderstand the whole situation through monastic philosophy. The quivering quality of the moon is also variable. When water is standing still, there is no quivering. The more settled conditioned souls quiver less. But due to material connection, the quivering quality is more or less present everywhere. So another beautiful example, just to understand and illustrate how the Lord is never impacted and the living entity apparently seems to be impacted. And that impact also is variable. And it's interesting in this purport and the previous purport, the examples are given to show how suffering is apparent. In other purports, there's a nice statement, I think it's one of the purports, Prabhupada says that suffering for the living entity is completely superfluous. The suffering that you're going through in this material world is completely superfluous. It's like non-existent for the living entity. Yet you're suffering. Yet you're experiencing the suffering. But the suffering has no substance in relation to the true soul. The only reason you're experiencing the suffering or apparently experiencing the suffering is because of your association with matter. Like the moon or like the reflection of the moon on water. The reflection of the moon, because the moon is still, should also be still. But because it is on water which is moving, quivering, it seems that the reflection goes. And that is why the more you raise your consciousness above the material plane, the more you raise your consciousness above the physical body, the more you raise your consciousness above your material identity, the less and less you'll experience the quivering. Until the state where you are fully Krishna conscious. You are fully transcendental to material nature. When that state happens, you will never experience any material suffering. 12. And that is the best remedy for all our suffering. Savai nivriti dharmena vasudevanukampaya bhagavat bhakti yogena tirodate saneir iha. But that misconception of the self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. How? Through the process of devotional service to the Lord. In what mode? In the mode of detachment. Beautiful verse. And Prabhupada expands. The quivering quality of material existence, which comes from the identification with matter or from thinking oneself under the material influence of philosophical speculation to be God, can be eradicated by devotional service to the Lord, by the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. So we need mercy and we need service. As discussed in the first canto, because the application of devotional service to Lord Vasudeva invites pure knowledge, it quickly detaches one from the material conception of life and thus revives one's normal condition or spiritual existence, even in this life, and frees one from material winds which cause one to quiver. Only knowledge in devotional service can elevate one towards the path of liberation. The development of knowledge for the purpose of knowing everything without rendering devotional service is considered fruitless labor. One cannot get the desired result by such labor of love. Lord Vasudev is pleased by devotional service only, and thus his mercy is realized by association pure devotees of the Lord. Pure devotees of the Lord are transcendental to all material desires, including the desire for the result of fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. If one wants to acquire the mercy of the Lord, he has to associate with such pure devotees. Such association alone, by degrees, releases one from the quivering elements. So we have to engage in devotional service, get the mercy of the Supreme Lord, become detached from this material world, all through the process of devotional service, which gives knowledge, gyan, and vairagya, detachment. And this is best achieved in association of pure devotees. And what is the quality? What is the identification? How do we identify those pure souls? They're not interested in karma, gyan, yoga, or anything else. They're completely free from speculative tendencies, completely free from karmic desires, wanting to material tendencies, wanting to desire material things, completely free from the desire to get mystic perfection, completely free from monastic understanding. All they want is to engage in favorable devotional service. 13. Yadendriyo paramotha drashtrat mani pare haro viliyante tada klesha sam suptasya krishnasa. When the senses are satisfied in the seer supersoul, the personality of Godhead, and merge in him, all miseries are completely vanquished as after a sound sleep. Purport. The covering of the living entity, as described above, is due to the senses. Since the entire material existence is meant for sense gratification, the senses are the medium of material activities, and they cause a covering of the steady soul. Therefore, these senses are to be detached from all material activities. According to the impersonalists, the senses are stopped from work by merging the soul into the super soul Brahman. The devotees, however, do not stop the material senses from acting, but they engage their transcendental senses in the service of the transcendence, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In either case, the activities of the senses in the material field are to be stopped by cultivation of knowledge. And if possible, they can be engaged in the service of the Lord. The senses are transcendental in nature, but the activities become polluted when contaminated by matter. We have to treat the senses to cure them of the material disease, not stop them from acting, as suggested by the impersonalists. In Bhagavad Gita 259, it is said that one ceases all material activities only when satisfied by contact with better engagement. Consciousness is active by nature and cannot be stopped from working. Artificial stopping a mischievous child is not the real remedy. The child must be given some better engagement so that he will automatically stop causing mischief. In the same way, the mischievous activities of the senses can be stopped only by better engagement in relation with the Supreme Personality of God. When the eyes are engaged in seeing the beautiful form of the Lord, when the tongue engaged in tasting prasad or remnants of foodstuff offered to the Lord, the ears are engaged in hearing his glories, the hands engage in cleaning the temple of the Lord, the legs engage in visiting his temple, or when all the senses engage in transcendental variegatedness, then only can the transcendental senses become satiated and eternally free from material engagement. The Lord, as the Supersoul residing in everyone's heart as the Supreme Personal Godhead, is in the transcendental world far beyond material creation, is the seer of all our activities. Our activities must be so transcendently saturated that the Lord will be kind enough to look upon us favorably and engage us in his transcendental service, then only can the senses be satisfied completely and be no longer troubled by material attraction. I'll read that last sentence again. Our activities must be so transcendently saturated that the Lord will be kind enough to look upon us favorably and engage us in his transcendental service. Then only can the senses be satisfied completely and be no longer troubled by material attraction. So if we reverse this, we will be troubled by material attraction as long as the senses are not satisfied. And why will be that the case? Is because the Lord has not engaged us in his eternal transcendental service. Why? Because he has not, you could say, he is not fully kind. He's kind, but not fully kind. Okay, when will he be fully kind? Only when our activities is transcendently saturated. So if it's partially saturated, if it's flickering in transcendence, if it's now and then in transcendence, then we won't experience the full impact. So we want the end result, which is no longer troubled by material attraction. Because if there's no material attraction, if the senses are not attracted materially, Robert said in the previous, or in the beginning of the purport, that the covering is there due to the senses. That's how we experience the covering. So if we can resolve the senses and the engagement of the senses, then we resolve the covering. So there's no suffering if we resolve the covering. Implication: how much of my senses are engaged in the service of the Lord? How long are my senses engaged in the service of the Lord? As long as I can continuously, uninterruptedly engage the senses in seeing the Lord, eating the remnants of the Lord, hearing about the Lord, serving the Lord, visiting the Lord, to that degree, my senses, my activities become saturated, and to that degree the Lord becomes kind. To that degree the Lord looks upon us favorably, and to that degree the Lord will engage us eternally in his service. So this is the process. This is the cultivation, anushilanam. That is why Krishna consciousness is said to be cultivation. It's said to be anushilanam. It's not an overnight journey. It's not a switch. Switch, sorted. It's not a switch. It's not an overnight journey. It is a cultivation. It takes time to mold oneself in this way. Therefore, constant hearing, constant understanding, constant reminder, constant engagement. Because life happens and we can be derailed. And I have other responsibilities. So while I have other responsibilities, just like, why should I look after this material body if this material body is temporary and it's going to die? Some philosophers are like that. Why should we even bother about transcendence if I just have one life? Some philosophers are like that. So for us, this material body is, yes, it's material. It's a vehicle. where the soul is, where the Lord is. It becomes a temple. So even though it's material, I still need to look after it. So I look after it as best as possible. And while I'm looking after it, my focus, my activities should be dovetailed around the Supreme Personality of God. And while I'm doing that, I'm molding, I'm reviving, I'm resuscitating, I'm renovating, I'm rekindling, I'm reawakening my true identity, my true relationship with the Supreme Personality of God. And over time, I am becoming more and more Krishna conscious. From 0 to 100. And when it's 100, I have no material body. And that is the process of Krishna consciousness. 14. And if this happens, then Ashesha Sanklesha Samam Vidyate Gunanuvada Sravanam Murare Kimva Punna Tach Charanaravinda Paraga Seva Ratir Atmalab Labda. Simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc. of the personality of God at Sri Krishna, one can achieve the cessation of unlimited miserable conditions. Therefore, what to speak of those who have attained attraction for serving the flavor of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet. Report. Two different methods for controlling the material senses are recommended in the Vedic scriptural wisdom. One of them is the process of jnana, or the path of philosophical understanding of the Supreme Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The other is that of direct engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Of these two most popular methods, the path of devotional service is recommended here as the best, because one on the path of pure devotional service, one does not have to wait for the attainment of the fruit of results of pious activities or for the result of knowledge. The two stages of executing devotional service are: first, the stage of practicing devotional service with our present senses under the regulations of the recognized scriptures, and second, attaining sincere attachment for servicing the particles of the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. The first stage is called sadhana bhakti, or devotional service for the neophyte, which is rendered under the direction of a pure devotee. And the second stage is called raga bhakti, in which the mature devotee automatically takes to the various services of the Lord out of sincere attachment. The great sage Maitreya now gives the final answer to all the questions of Vidura. Devotional service to the Lord is the ultimate means to mitigate all the miseries, all the miserable conditions of material existence. The path of knowledge and that of mystic gymnastics may be adopted as a means for the purpose, but unless mixed with bhakti or devotional service, they are unable to award the desired results. By practicing sadhana bhakti, one may gradually rise to the point of raga bhakti. And by performing raga bhakti in loving transcendental service, one can even control the supreme, powerful Lord. Santrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktavinda ki jai, Nitai, Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bo. Are there any questions or comments? Please let me know in the chat. Very wonderful conclusion. Maitreya Muni is clarifying what Srila Prabhupada has been telling us again and again and again. And we know So we simply have to continue. We're practicing sadhana bhakti. Prabhupada is also saying one may gradually rise. It's not a switch. It's not a press button. It's a gradual process. Understand that it's a gradual process, which means understand you have to have tolerance. You need to tolerate the variables of circumstances for you to continue on the path of sadhana bhakti and not be derailed, not to be distracted, not to be diverted, not to waste your energy, but to keep your focus on what's the most beneficial for you, the living entity. So therefore, we stay to this path. And as we stay and stick on this path, what will be the result? Rag bhakti, attachment to the Supreme Personality of God, natural attachment. So you can't practice rag bhakti, you can't jump to rag bhakti. You go through this process, sadhana bhakti, and slowly you become more and more attached. And in that way, perfect our lives. Namabati Radhika says, a beautiful way to start our new year by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes. Thank you for this class. Beautiful art. We appreciate and value you both. Thank you. Nice points for us to contemplate. Beautiful points for us to meditate, contemplate. And yes, like we posted that New Year message of Srila Prabhupada. Very wonderful message of Srila Prabhupada. I'm just going to bring it up and share that. Where Prabhupada talks about how do we see New Year? What consciousness? And why is it like that? Prabhupada says, Happy New Year. Every day is New Year. Nava Yovana, Nava Yovana. Our Krishna consciousness is so nice that the more you advance, you see New Year, every day. Not just New Year at New Year's, but every day. That is spiritual life. In the material world, everything becomes old. But in the spiritual world, everything becomes newer and newer. This is Krishna consciousness. You never feel old. You never feel tired. That is spiritual life. So if we on this path, if we focusing on this process and maintaining ourselves on this process, then this will be the experience. Asaraj says, devotional service is the only means to understand Krishna, commencing with sadhana bhakti. Yes. Theory, just having the knowledge will not give us understanding of Krishna. Why? Because Krishna is beyond intellectual understanding. You can only understand bhaktya mam abhijanati. Abhijana means to understand. One can only understand me through devotional service. So the only solution, like if we say Krishna consciousness is the only solution, what does it mean? What we're really saying is devotional service is the only solution. Loving devotional service is the only solution. And you'll see Prabhupada throughout his Bhaktivedanta purports, technically it's love is the only solution. But when you say love is the only solution, a lot of people misunderstand. They don't realize it. Wait. Love means service. Like bhakti is the only solution. Devotion is the only solution. Then it becomes armchair. Therefore, Prabhupada throughout Prabhupada's Bhakti purports, he says devotional service. We have to cultivate service. We have to become attached to service. We have to be inclined to serving. We have to get used to that. service to Krishna, become attached to serving Krishna. And once we do that, the process will take care of everything else. Thank you very much for your attendance. We will continue next week with the discussion of Vidura's and further inquiries. King Kapur says, Hare Krishna, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for awesome class. Thank you very much for your attendance. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gwantaraj Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bo.